Hi there, welcome to Dev Brew. This is where indie developers submit their games and I do my best to give feedback on their game design. This video is specifically for Power Dive Games, who made this game called Pit of Ascension, which you can see right here. Pit of Ascension was submitted to me for game design feedback. If it feels like I'm talking past you, it's because I am. I'm talking straight to the developer. Thank you so much for submitting this game, by the way, and I actually had a lot of fun with this game. In fact, why don't I start there? This game had really, really good design, and it's really hard to give feedback on a game that has such good design because I feel like what I need to do is help you improve on your game, but this game is already so... It's designed almost flawlessly. It's really, really good. By the way, forgive my mic placement. I forgot my shock mount. I'm going to hold off about talking about all the good things because I want to get into what we're here for, but I do want to glaze over some of the stuff. This game has super tight controls. It has such good feel. It has good variety. It has really good juice, and there's a low barrier of entry. A lot of this kind of stuff that this game covers is stuff that I talk about for the developers all the time. If you're not the developer and you're looking at this game, study this game, man. Because this game it's on point with all the design that's involved. It's really, really good. So when someone submits a game to me, why are they doing it? That's one of the questions that I ask on my submission form, although it's not worded that way. It's worded as, what kind of experience do you want the player to have? Because that orients my feedback. When I asked that on this game, Power Dive Games said that they wanted a difficult but replayable experience. And this game was that. It was difficult and replayable. So that's the end. There's another section on the submission form that I ask, what is the design element that you're least proud of? This person said they think the bosses are unbalanced. As I was playing through the game, I did find that some bosses were harder than others. So, by the way, if you're not the developer and you have a game that you want me to give game design feedback for, you can enter a monthly drawing. I do this twice a month, or you can use my Fiverr link in the description. What I want to talk about really quickly is what is balance in game design. Balance in a single player game I've heard described as an appropriate challenge for the player. When looking at your game, when looking at all these bosses and trying to figure out how to make them all the same difficulty, is that the appropriate challenge that you want for your player? Is that what you're trying to do, is create all different kinds of bosses that all have the same difficulty? In this sense, yeah, I think that is what you want to do. Because they're in sort of randomized order, you can't really start out with anything that's really tough versus starting out with something that's really difficult. And there were times where I was starting out that I was like, geez, not this one, or versus another one that's like, oh yeah, I can do that. I was trying to figure out then what feels off balance about these bosses. What makes one harder than the other? This can be pretty hard to explain because what makes a boss difficult is its complexity. Complexity is the amount of information that the player needs to know in order to make a decision in the game. Now, complex doesn't always mean difficult. If you look at Super Crate Box, it's a difficult game, but it's not complex. It's very simple. If you look at Devil Daggers, it's a very simple game, but it's very difficult. So why then does Pit of Ascension have difficulty equated with complexity? And I think it's because each of these bosses are just one battle that's happening. It's just one self-contained little battle. The rules are pretty simple. It's to beat the boss. That's all it is. It's to defeat this enemy. But there can be complexity in defeating that enemy. What kind of steps are involved? What kind of patterns you're looking for? How many different things you have to focus on. If you look at games just in general and you're trying to figure out what difficulty is, like what makes a game difficult, I would say it's probably one of skill. I would say like a game like Celeste, for example, is a very difficult game because it requires a high amount of skill in order to get across certain levels. Any games that have a very high concentration on skill involved creates a very difficult game. That's the reason why Devil Daggers can be very difficult, because it takes a lot of skill in order to evade all the enemies in the right way. When the player is playing this game, they're trying to do the same thing to each boss. They're just trying to defeat them. That's it, right? Make the health meter go all the way down and you're done. But if there's more steps involved, then the player has to get better at doing those steps in order to vanquish the boss. So I would say what makes a more complex boss is a boss that has lots of things that you have to focus on. Some of those bosses, like the hardest one for me, was the snake boss, where you have to focus on your position on both ends of the screen at the same time. You also have to evade the spikes coming up and the little blobs that are shooting out. Trying to defeat the ghost has a lot of skill in dodging. You have to figure out how to jump perfectly or how to roll dodge perfectly. So in this case, difficulty does equal complexity, because the more complex you're making the boss, the more involved the skill learning is. Now the player needs to not only be good at dodging, but they also have to be good at going to the ATM and depositing money at a certain time, or they have to be good at looking at the reflection at the same time as dodging all these spikes, or they have to be good at dodging spikes while dodging leaves at the same time. So in order to make each of the bosses at a similar difficulty, they would all need to have a similar amount of skill involved. They can still be unique, but whereas one would take 4 different types of skill, like the snake boss, one of them takes just like one type of skill, like the Lacra boss. So increasing complexity in the easy bosses or decreasing complexity in the hard bosses would attain that balance that you're looking for, I think. This game otherwise has pretty perfect design. I really like the design in this game. In fact, I just kind of want to gush about how great the game design is. One of the things I think is really good is that all these bosses have really good telegraphing. I think telegraphing is just really important. If you don't know what telegraphing is, it's when an enemy is doing something in order to make the player understand they're about to attack, and all of your bosses do that, and I think that's amazing. I can understand what a boss is going to do even when it was my first time playing. Really like that. Another thing is having a little square as a countdown timer, like up here next to the player's head. That's just awesome. That's so cool. It's so genius. I love the idea of having a little square because it doesn't take up that much room and the player knows what it is after it happens. It's just a little cooldown meter. It's great. It's fantastic. Another thing that I really like is the lobby. The lobby in here is awesome because it creates a non-conflicting space for the player to just rest and kind of reassess and just be like, okay, let's get ready for the next fight. Really like that. I do want to talk about actually some design problems because I know this is an early game. You don't really have everything, done just yet. But one of those things that I noticed was when I first went into the game, you're immediately brought to the weapon selection screen, but all these weapons are kind of bonus on top of your already default weapon. So me coming in as a brand new player with zero context, I have no idea what any of this means. I don't know what my 3 slots means. I don't know why they change when I select a certain weapon. I think something that would help that is something that's prior to this, kind of like if you've played Downwell before. Downwell has this amazing surface screen where as soon as you start up Downwell, you don't start in the well, you start on the surface and your player is just sitting on a bench, and you control them and you go over to the well and then jump in. And what that does is it lets the player kind of get acquainted with the controls about what's considered normal first before they start upgrading and everything. And that's just done without any kind of tutorial or anything like that. It's just allowing the player to experiment first and then letting them enter when they're ready. And that's kind of what the lobby does already, but having like something before the lobby, before the weapon selection screen would be really nice. Like maybe, I don't know, entering a building before you start the weapon selection screen, or entering a door that says round 1 or something like that, because as soon as I start the journey, again, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. It would be nice to be acquainted with my character first before I just commit. This is just a quick addition because I totally forgot to talk about this last time. There was something else that I wanted to talk about in the design. What was it? When I first played this game, I didn't have any idea that I could roll dodge. Had no idea. I did know that I could roll, but upon seeing it, all I knew is that it gave me a boost forward. That's kind of all I thought it did. So when I was fighting bosses, there were times where I was like, how the hell am I supposed to dodge those bullets? That makes no sense. I think the reason why is because this is a platform shooter. For someone like me who has played platform shooters before, I usually think of them as things that are on the screen collide with each other. So if I'm rolling, to me, it just looks like I'm invincible for a few frames. It doesn't look like I'm, dodging out of the way because there's no depth. So one of the ways to understand that is to just experiment until you find out, oh, you can do that. Or you can tell them in text, just the worst way to do it. or you can do a silent tutorial. One of the things I mentioned earlier in the video was about how you could enter a building first and then select your weapon to like kind of give you a sense of what normal is. One of the ideas was you're in this little place, be it outside a building or whatever, and you have to roll past a hazard of some sort in order to enter the building to select your weapon, right? So you have a room, you have your hazard, and you have a door, and the only way to get through the door is to roll past this little hazard. It's just like a tiny little thing, just a tiny little screen, just to show the player that's exactly what they can do. And it could be just, I don't know, it's just a fun thing also. It's just neat. The other thing that I forgot to mention was that this game, even though it has a ton of really good game feel and juiciness, it does not have really good game feel with damaging the player. Like whenever I got hurt in the game, I almost never knew when I got hurt. I had to stare at my hearts. I had to keep looking over at my hearts all the time. I mean, I know what it is right now is a little freeze happens, and I think it's a little freeze, and there's a sound effect, but nothing registers for me. I would strengthen that a lot more. I'm sure you can figure out a way. You've already had like some amazing game design in here. Anyway, that's just what I wanted to add on and on with the video. Thank you so much, Power Dive Games, for giving me this game to analyze and just talk about and rip apart and everything. I wrote so much about this game. It's funny, I actually don't like boss rush games at all, but this one was awesome. I don't like them because I have this thing about boss fights. I won't talk about it in this video, but viewers who are watching, let me know if you want to know about my boss fights, the thing that I have about boss fights. I hate them. But this game, really changed my mind on it, kind of. I got pretty far. I didn't make it out of the pit. I didn't beat the game. A lot of fun. I hope this game gets big because it's super dope. I have another channel, by the way. This is the alternate channel. The main channel is that one. See, Games Over Coffee. That's my channel. Go to that one because that one's cool.